Welcome to the Spot On Insurance Podcast, brought to you by ILSA, Insurance Licensing Services of America. This is Ted Tavares.
And this is Arlene Tavares, coming to you from beautiful Puerto Rico. I'm so excited because today we'll be exploring the latest innovations and industry trends.
But before we begin, please remember to click on the subscribe button so you don't miss a single episode. And now, here's our host, Doug Foresta.
This is Doug Foresta. Joining me today are Tara Mitchell and Norma Essary from Surplus Line Stamping Office of Texas. And great to have you. Can you first tell our audience a little bit about yourselves and your position, what you do?
Thank you, Doug. My name is Norma Essary, and I'm the Executive Director for the Surplus Line Stamping Office of Texas. My role is to provide oversight of the organization. I have been here for approximately a little over a year, and prior to this, spent the last 25 years in the insurance and risk management industry.
Hi, Doug. This is Tara Mitchell. I am the IT Director here at the Surplus Line Stamping Office of Texas. I'm new to the organization about 10 months ago. Prior to that, I came from the Department of Insurance, where I was a project manager and financial examiner. And currently, some of what I do is looking at the technology piece of this organization and what our goals are to reinvest in that piece and make our processes more efficient.
Great. Thank you so much. Now, before we go on, we're going to talk about late filers. We're going to talk about diligent efforts. But before we do that, can you explain as well what Surplus Line Stamping Office of Texas does?
I'll go ahead and take that question, Doug. This is Norma Essary. Our organization is actually a quasi-government nonprofit association. We were established in 1987 under the Texas Insurance Code, Chapter 981. And the purpose was really to facilitate compliance between the surplus lines industry, insurers and carriers, the agents and brokers, the regulatory agencies, which is the Texas Department of Insurance, and the state comptroller. What's interesting in our great state is that the Texas Surplus Lines Association drafted the legislation in hopes of creating an organization that would better suit and efficiently address the surplus lines agent filings, required filings, compliance, and really to be a bit more efficient in addressing those matters. Our role and our job at the Surplus Line Stamping Office of Texas is to create that efficient process for getting compliance done, to ensure that it's accurate, to provide the appropriate reports, ad hoc reports, or data information about the surplus line specialty insurance marketplace. It really is about providing information that allows us to gauge metrics. It's information that's shared with all stakeholders, whether it's the public, the state legislatures, state agencies, trade organizations, periodicals, insurers, our board of directors, as well as third-party filers. And we're doing it all here today.
Thank you very much. Now, I know we're going to talk about late filers. What are some of the common issues that you see among late filers?
Hey, Doug, this is Tara. I'll take that question for you. In general, most of the states are requiring policies to be submitted within a given time frame. And late filings occur really because I think it's a missed opportunity to become familiar with and educated about the state-specific laws beforehand. Specifically, the Texas Insurance Code has a section of law, it's section 981.105, that applies to timely policy filings. In our state, the agents have 60 days from the effective or issue date, whichever is later, to get their files into us. That means they have to be completed and accepted by our office in order to be considered filed. We are conducting additional outreach to remedy incomplete filings to avoid them being sent back and then subject to being late filed. One area in particular is with the coverage risk location zip code, which is oftentimes missing from the policy information. It's required for us in order to accept the policies. Late filings can cause real financial consequences in terms of late fees, or worse, even enforcement cases, which are subject to penalties, consent orders, or other remedies. Often we hear that agency staff that's responsible for the filings or the third-party filers are simply told, here, file this with the stamping office, and there's little or no additional guidance. The licensed surplus lines agent is ultimately responsible for these filings. We find that once the staff has reached out to us, we can provide the guidance and requirements for filing with our office. But many times, this is past the 60-day filing requirement. We also see a large number of staff that are not taking advantage of by providing us the issue date. As a reminder, the 60-day filing requirement is from the later of the effective date or issue date. By not providing an issue date, you are essentially eliminating the second factor for determining a timely filing. We definitely encourage all agencies or filing teams to contact the stamping office to discuss this matter before filings are made so that we can correct them with the most accurate information and keep them off of that late filer's report. We're also finding that many agencies do not have reconciliation processes in place. By reconciling each month's filings that an agency expects to be filed with the Surplus Lines Stamping Office of Texas with the actual transactions listed on the invoice detailed report, the agency will be able to identify in a more timely fashion any gaps or missing submissions. It is all about accountability and having in place some types of checks and balances.
The next topic that I know we wanted to cover was coverage and class. What do people, and by people I mean agents, need to know about coverage and class?
Well, the first thing to remember is that coverage and class codes are subjective from state to state, as our industry is not subject to rate and form filing standards. This is great because it allows for flexibility and innovation when designing products that fit customers or insured's needs. And this is also what drives a free market concept. However, it also makes it somewhat difficult to understand, as there are no uniform definitions for all coverage and class codes used by each state when evaluating eligible surplus lines policies. It's important for our stakeholders that the data we collect remain consistent in terms of being able to understand what it means. Our staff is here to ease the burden of understanding the complex system by offering assistance in several different ways. Coverage and class selection for agencies filed electronically can at times be a bit tricky. We're continuously evaluating our processes to find ways to improve the feedback and education for this process. For instance, we have an electronic filing system tech support staff, or help desk, as others may call, and they're there to determine the correct codes by providing evaluation, feedback, whether it's written or verbal, on an individual policy by policy basis. The team also provides mapping or a roadmap of the correct codes based on agency's specific line of business. So this really just goes back, Doug, to providing more of an outreach to our stakeholders to ensure that they're in compliance and they're able to understand their own data going for the long haul.
And again, to clarify, obviously specifically we're talking about for Texas here right now, correct?
Correct.
But I would imagine, although I know you can't speak for every state, I would imagine there's probably similar issues.
That's true. Many of our peers in the other states, fortunately, they too also have a tech support and education group in their organizations that provide that outreach for their members and those agents and brokers who file information in their states.
One of the things I know we're going to talk about today is diligent effort. Can you explain a bit more about that? What do people need to know about diligent effort?
Sure, Doug. This is Tara. I'll take that question for you.
Sure.
Diligent effort is required in many states, and it's to varying degrees. It is required under Texas Insurance Code Section 981.004, and it basically states that if the same kind and class of coverage or limits are not available in the standard admitted market, then it may be placed in the surplus lines excess market after a diligent search is performed. The surplus lines market really acts as a safety valve to the public for insurable interest which are not otherwise available. But it is also not to be confused, or it's not the same thing as an insurer of last resort, as the financial solvency requirements are much higher in the surplus lines market, creating more financially stable surplus lines insurance companies in which to place that risk. There have been actually no documented surplus lines insurer insolvencies in the marketplace since 2003, which is pretty incredible given the limited oversight of our industry. But getting back to diligent effort, the law is very vague here in our state on how to accomplish diligent effort. However, there is documented case law in some of these situations. We do foresee this as a hot topic for our next legislative session in 2017, as in 2015 legislation was filed to address this matter, and it was left pending in committee. While many states have some type of affidavit, diligent effort, or declination form, Texas does not. Even though Texas does not have a specific form to record your diligent effort, an agency is still required to perform the diligent effort and retain the information for its records. With the passage of the Non-Admitted Reinsurance and Reform Act in 2011, if the insured qualifies as an exempt commercial purchaser, it may not be necessary to attempt to place a diligent effort in the admitted market. In other words, there could be an exemption there for those folks.
Spot On Insurance is sponsored by ILSA, Insurance Licensing Services of America, America's premier licensing and regulatory compliance experts. To learn more about ILSA and the services they provide, visit ilsainc.com.
That's actually a good segue, as you mentioned, exempt commercial purchasers. Can you say a little bit more about that, about exempt commercial purchasers?
Yes, the exempt commercial purchasers, which are often called ECPs, I guess that's the nomenclature for that. They're really basically a classification of insureds that are recognized nationwide and meet guidelines set forth in the Texas Insurance Code 981.0031. In essence, they are large commercial purchasers of surplus lines insurance who are given exemption from performing a diligent effort due to the nature of the transaction. And a good example might be some large commercial insurer, that's looking for layers in the billions, or maybe layers in billions for terrorism or something that's just not readily available. What we have seen of the million-plus policies reported to our office just in the last 18 months, only about 1,700 were policies where the insured was designated as an ECP, an exempt commercial purchaser. That's roughly 0.17%. So what we've done is we've recently completed a high-level analysis and determined that the majority of the agencies filing business with our office are perhaps not utilizing this caveat. Of those responses, we've categorized them in two different categories. Those where their users or filing staff do not know what an exempt commercial purchaser or ECP is, or two, the agency does not have the insured that meets that criteria. So we're really trying to do some diligence on our own effort to be able to spread the word to our agents and brokers that there already exists an exemption for those ECPs that they may already have and may not be using it.
That's a huge takeaway right there. So if I'm a broker, right, and I'm dealing with insurance in Texas, this is something that I want to think about.
For sure.
For sure. And I'll just also interject too that, the ECP, that's a nationwide definition under the NRRA. So it's not only Texas, but it's all the states that function under the same definition that we have in Section 981.0031. It is a mirror reflection of the national law.
Oh, great. Excellent. Even better. Even better. So this applies across all states.
Mm-hmm.
Finally, we have transaction types. And what do people most need to know when it comes to transaction types?
Well, Doug, when it comes to transaction types, there are different types of transactions, and it's very important to know what drives the reporting requirements and the application of either the Texas Insurance Code or the Texas Administrative Code. We haven't talked much today about the Texas Administrative Code, but it is Title 28, Texas Administrative Code, Chapter 15, which does implement or enable the state statute, which is Texas Insurance Code Chapter 981. For example, the 60-day filing requirement that we talked about earlier only applies to new or renewal surplus lines insurance. However, there's a caveat that changes or endorsements are required to be, quote, promptly filed in accordance with the law. So you can see there that there are different types of transactions that we receive that are subject to different parts of the law. Many agency users or filing teams are not receiving enough education about their agency's particular business transactions. So that's when we often encounter or experience errors when staff does not know the difference between, for example, a cancellation, an audit, an installment, or a premium-bearing endorsement. Which, again, are subject to different state laws. Or even sometimes it's just having that basic knowledge and understanding between what is a policy and what is a binder. As these questions arise, our office works with staff, either at the agency level or with a filing team, to educate them as to the difference in the documentation that determines the type of transaction and how each is impacted by either the law or the rule.
Well, thank you so much. This has been great information. Can you also share with our listeners how they can learn more about you?
Sure, Doug, this is Tara. They can reach out to us. We have a couple of different ways. We have our main phone number, of course, which is 512-531-1880. We also have tech support email address, which is techsupport@slsot.org. They can come to our website as well, where we have an FAQ section at www.slsot.org.
And they can also, within one of the things that we're also looking at down the road, given with all the technology and social media opportunities, is really how do we revamp our education so that it really meets the needs of both resident and non-resident agents.
Thank you so much. Well, Tara Mitchell, Norma Essary, thank you for joining me today and sharing such great content and words of wisdom with our listeners.
Thank you, Doug.
Thank you.
Thank you.
When you get a chance, go to our show notes and click the link to rate and review our podcast.